right, welcome to another edition of the Baseline Scoop. I'm your host, Zach Chavalelli, here with my guy, our producer, Uriah Young. Uriah, how you doing this lovely evening?
2 words. Mac McClung. Dunk
contest.
Oh, yeah. Get ready. Get ready.
Yeah.
Who cares about the All-Star game or three-point contest? Mac McClung. I'm ready for the 2 dunks that he says that nobody's ever seen.
He may be the lone representative for the Sixers at the All-Star game. If Embiid decides to sit, like which he said that he might. That's kind of a crazy thing to think about, especially since, he wasn't on the roster until, within the past week. Of course, he's been with the D-League Blue Coats. We both had a chance to, to check him out live and in person. So definitely going to be exciting. Definitely going to be pulling for the guy. But super stoked about that. We got a good show for all you folks today. We're going to be talking about a little bit Sixers Cavs, a little recap. We're going to be previewing, the All-Star break a little bit, talk about the Sixers state of up to this point. Then also we're going to get some post-All-Star break predictions in today. But before we do that, I would just like to remind you that, as always, the Baseline Scoop is brought to you by La Touraine Watches. You can shop La Touraine for affordable luxury watches. Their watches and accessories offer timeless style and design without high prices or shoddy materials, and every watch they sell is backed by their 24-month warranty that is 2 years to protect your investment for years to come. Pre-orders for the new manifest are now open, and do not forget promo code BLS10 for 10% off. That is BLS10, as in Baseline Scoop, for 10% off. Now, it's a heck of a game we watched last night, Uriah.
Yeah, it was. Never was trailing from behind. Like, we always had the lead, which is good. But we know what happens when the Sixers go up, right?
Yeah. Well, they made it interesting once again. That's definitely one way of putting it. So it was an important game, right? Because entering in, this could have decided the tiebreaker between the Sixers and the Cavs. This was game 2 of, I believe, 3 that the 2 teams play this year. Mm-hmm. The Cavs obviously won game 1. These are the 2 teams fighting for that 3 and 4 seed right now. So to lose that tiebreaker and give them a game advantage last night, that would have been pretty tough for the Sixers. So thankfully, they stood out. They ended up winning the game. They are now 2 games ahead of the Cavaliers in the standings, and they have a shot to win the tiebreaker when the 2 teams face next. So still a lot of time between now and then. That's on March 15th. But that's a good win for last night. Very much a bend, don't break kind of a game, but there were definitely some things that stood out, some good things to watch, why don't we start with the starters, as we should. Who really stood out to you in that game?
Well, obviously Joel Embiid, he led all scores for the Sixers with 29 points. Also had 14 boards. James Harden is an assist machine. And I'd say, Zach, overall, that the starting lineup as a whole did a very good job. I think it was PJ Tucker's best scoring game in a while. He had 10 points and knocked down some threes. Tobias, I think early on, it was very promising to see him shoot with confidence and just get his swagger back, because there was a point right around when they were playing on Christmas Day when he just was hot, and then he just dropped off, right? After he made that statement. Tell someone you know that I'm a shooter, or something like that.
But he referred to himself a sharpshooter, and he wanted everyone to tell everyone they know. Yeah.
Tell someone to tell someone, right?
Yeah.
So even though Embiid was inefficient, he didn't shoot 50% from the field. He did score a ton from the free throw line, which in recent games, man, actually all season, the Sixers have been really effective from the foul line and outscoring opponents and percentage and all that good stuff. The one thing that I'll say before you chime in is the first half was everything. I think the Sixers starters really limited what the bigs for Cleveland would always try and do. Obviously, we're talking about Mobley and Jarrett Allen. They were pretty much non-factors in the first half. So I think the Sixers did a good job limiting what they can do, and overall did a nice job in the first half against D. Mitch. Second half, he went off, as you know. But, yeah, that's what I think about the starters.
Yeah, I think that you're exactly right. You hit a lot of the major points. PJ Tucker game, that was one thing that stood out for me for the starters. I mean, obviously, there's more to the starters. I'll get to Joel Embiid in just a second and just how special he is. But, I mean, it was great to see that out of Tucker. It was much needed to see that out of Tucker. But I think any game where every starter's in double digits, I think that's a pretty good sign. PJ Tucker also finished a team high plus 19, which, like, plus minus is not the end-all be-all, but, I mean, that's pretty good. You can't really argue too much against that for one single game. But no, just absolutely phenomenal game. Joel Embiid crosses 10,000 career points. Fastest Sixer to do that in franchise history. Faster than Allen Iverson even. I believe he's the 13th fastest player in NBA history to cross 10,000 points. That is, I mean,
special.
We take him for granted sometimes, let's be honest. Like, he's made 30-point games from the center position just seem like the norm. And it's just so easy to focus on the negative with Embiid, some people call it pouting, whatever, attitude, projection you want to talk about, or, the over handling, with the ball and the turnovers that come with that, there's just so many different things that we like to complain about. That's the universal we complain about.
Don't forget foul merchant. Don't forget foul merchant.
Stuff like that. And it's like, and that's the thing, is that you're going to get people who would try to discredit the 10,000 points by saying he's a foul merchant. I mean, listen, if the free throws didn't count, they wouldn't count as points. Like, that's basically it. Like, I mean, I don't remember here. Giannis leads in more free throw attempts than Embiid. He has more average attempts per game than Embiid, but you don't hear anybody talk about that. Embiid is just like, he can get you from anywhere. He can beat you down low. He can beat you off he can beat bigs off the dribble, which is just crazy to think about. Pick and roll, pick and pop. He can shoot from three. Like, he can do, like, whether he will do it or not, that's a different story. But from like a perspective, he can do everything offensively. And
that's a testament. Isn't that a testament to his effectiveness and his dominance, is the fact that guys have to foul him because they can't stop him all the ways that you're talking about?
Does he seek out contact? Yeah. I mean, obviously. I think that more bigs would do that if they could actually hit their free throws. But, Embiid's worked very hard at being able to hit those free throws. I do wonder, this is something that, I don't know, if I ever get the chance, I'll ask him, but the amount of time that he spent injured and just not playing, like, there are so few things that you can actually do with those types of, like, foot injuries. I do wonder if that contributed positively to his, skill level shooting free throws, because that's one of the things, like, free throws, you're not really, like, you're using a little bit of the lower, body muscles, but like, that's one of the first things that you can get back in the gym and do. So I do wonder, like, if Embiid doesn't sit for those 2 years, like, are we looking at a guy who can hit with this efficiency, and on top of that, like, who can score in the way that he does? But I'm getting off on a tangent. All that just to say that Embiid is truly something special, folks. Just enjoy him while he is here. That will not always be the case. And no, I'm not talking about a possible trade to Miami in the offseason. I'm just talking about the fact that...
Whoa.
everybody,
there, man.
I know. But listen, you go on not even a losing streak, right? But in Philadelphia, you see just the games not being won as decisively as people feel that they should be. And you have everybody, or even just, the team signed Dwayne Dedmon, or they didn't trade for a backup center at the deadline. And the narrative is, Joel Embiid's going to request a trade in the offseason. And that's compounded by stuff like earlier in the year when Embiid did mention those trade comments, where if you read Jake Fisher, what he actually wrote about his conversation with Embiid, you'd understand that it's just Joel, his nickname, his preferred nickname is Troel. Like, it's just his troll nature coming out. That's
right.
All that it is. The man loves Philadelphia too much. Him and James Harden love what they're doing here too much. I don't see the gang breaking up. But again, what I mean when I say enjoy it while it lasts is that these eras are finite. Joel Embiid will not always be in Philadelphia. He will not always be in the NBA. He will not always play at this level. Enjoy it while it lasts. That's all I'm saying there. But it was a special night for a lot of different people. The starters, the PJ Tucker night, Joel Embiid we mentioned, James Harden. Fantastic night passing the rock. But the bench also had a very good night. Now, I got a guy in my mind who really stood out, and I think it's pretty easy to guess who that was. But why don't you go ahead? Who really stood out on the bench for you, Uriah?
You know what? I'll let you take the positive. I'll go negative.
Sure,
negative
go
Nancy. I was disappointed in. I mean, as a whole, they did as much as they needed to do to, I guess, maintain the first lead in the first half. And then I actually think, I forget specifically if the starters started giving away a lead as Cleveland made a comeback. But just looking at individual performances, Georges Niang, I can't remember the last time he only shot 1 3-pointer. Dude, that's your job. When you're out there, you got to find a way to get open. He only played 13 minutes, and he only had 2 points. So I was disappointed in that. Maxey, look, we'll get into him being a starter versus 6-man later, but 6 for 12, I think that's a modest number for him. I think he needs to take more shots. And I'm just disappointed in Milton, and I don't necessarily think it's his fault. He only played roughly 10 minutes. In my opinion, I think he needs more minutes just to keep him with that confidence, because back in November, December, he was playing lights out. We need that Shake Milton consistently throughout the season. So I was a little disappointed in the bench outside of Maxey. What'd you think?
I mean, listen, when you look at the entire product as a whole, I think that they did well. I think the place I want to start is Paul Reed, and just how efficient he was. He played 9 minutes, but they were 9 energetic, fantastic minutes. He had 4 rebounds, 2 blocks, 5 points. That's fantastic. That kind of effort, he'd pull out an offensive rebound as well. He was fantastic. I know everyone was worried about Dwayne Dedmon getting the bulk of the minutes at the backup. Montrezl Harrell, Doc falling into bad habits and putting Harrell back in there. But no, he's still sticking with Paul Reed for now, and Reed is really delivering and making it really tough for Doc to defer to one of the more experienced veterans. But great night for Paul Reed. And then another guy who I thought had a very good game. And it's tough to tell when looking at the box score. Again, like I said, you cannot put all your eggs into the plus-minus basket. I thought Jalen McDaniels did a pretty good job last night. Now, listen, there was that run that Cleveland made, and that's part of what affects McDaniels' negative plus-minus there. But the defensive ability that he had, now he was on LeVert for a good portion of it, and I'm surprised Doc didn't put him on Donovan Mitchell. He stuck with Tobias on Donovan Mitchell. And that's something that I'm a little curious about. I don't know if that's an experience thing or what the thought process going into that in particular was. But even still, I thought that McDaniels, just the length, the athleticism, the rebounding ability, it just fits such a much-needed hole on the Sixers roster. And so I think every time that I watch it, it's so, because I guess it's so new and it's been so long since we've had someone like that. It's just it's almost amazing every time I watch it, because it's like something I haven't seen, But -9 in the plus-minus, 4 personal fouls, I get it, but contributing those 4 rebounds, that athletic defensive impact, just I think that's huge. So, and then of course there's Tyrese Maxey, who was efficient. He did not take as many shots as we would have liked, obviously. And again, we'll talk more on that in a little bit. But, he hit him at an efficient clip. It wasn't the best bench game, but I think there were definitely some bright spots. And so that's really what I'm looking for from the bench in a game against a top 4 team in the Eastern Conference. So all in all, I'd say I was pretty happy.
Cool.
Yeah. So speaking of which, top 4 team in the Eastern Conference, it feels like there's kind of just like a top 3. You talk about the Bucks, you talk about the Celtics obviously leading the pack, and then you talk about the Sixers. So the Cavaliers, and I wonder if we differ on this. Do you think that they're a real threat in the East?
Well, I do believe that after seeing them completely trounce us earlier in the season. And we were shorthanded. I think Harden didn't play that game. And last night, clearly they have the ability to have a burst of offensive, just boom, in your face, score from anywhere on the floor. I think they have a solid front court, arguably, Zach, the best backcourt in the entire Eastern Conference. Just to see Darius Garland grow in the past 3 seasons into the player he is now, it's remarkable. Great playmaker. As you saw, I think he only missed 2 or 3 shots all night on maybe 15 or 16 shots. I don't know exactly what, but he is special. You see Donovan Mitchell, I think, scoring the most he's ever scored in his career, if I'm not mistaken. And Karis LeVert, you got some nice vets on that team. Kevin Love, we don't know what's going to happen with him. He's still on their roster, but I think their ceiling is like a 4 seed. Are they deep enough? Do they have enough firepower to take on Boston and Milwaukee? The answer is no. But I do think, Zach, that Cleveland could win a series in the first round. But to me, I think that's as far as they go. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we're kind of on the same page there. As far as the Kevin Love stuff goes, it seems like they're heading for a buyout, but nothing is definitive yet. Which is kind of shocking because word came out pretty quickly after the trade deadline that they were, in fact, not looking to buy him out. And I think what that comes down to is that Cleveland doesn't want him to go. We know that he's a very good veteran presence. And I think that Kevin Love is just looking for a situation where he can contribute not only off the court, but also on the court. So what's particularly interesting about that situation is that it could actually impact the rest of Cleveland's playoff, how far they go, like their entire stretch during this playoff run. One of the top teams, the top team linked to Kevin Love, is the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat are only 2.5 games back of the Nets for the 5 spot. So that's something that can clearly be made up. And if you're asking me, I have faith in the Heat rising and the Nets falling just based off of trade deadline acquisitions. So if the Heat were to then add, say, like a Kevin Love, I could definitely see a scenario where the Heat at least move over the Nets. Now, whether the Knicks take that 5 spot or the Heat do, who knows? But say the Heat take that 5 spot, then you have Kevin Love against the Cleveland Cavaliers in the first round, playing against Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, playing against Tyler Hero, Kyle Lowry, who I get it, he's not the Kyle Lowry of seasons past, but he's still a wily vet. You can't underestimate him. You have to go in expecting that he's at least going to be cerebral when you play against him. So I think that could potentially be a poor matchup for Cleveland, and that you could be looking at a first round exit. Otherwise, I do believe this team could win in the first round. I think they could beat the Knicks. I'm pretty confident they could beat the Nets. I think they could beat the Atlanta Hawks. Like that, however that would shake up if a team goes on a crazy run. Whoever's in the 5th seed, assuming the Cavs are the 4, because I don't think Sixers or the Bucks or the Celtics fall below the top 3. I think that top 3 is almost pretty much set, barring, you hate to say it, but injury. So we'll see what happens with the Cavs. Are they a title threat? I don't think so. I think this is a team that is looking to make the playoffs, make it past the first round, and just gain some experience while they wait for Evan Mobley to develop. Darius Garland is continuing to develop. The whole team is young. Like, all their stars are young, and they're just not deep enough is what it comes down to at the end of the day. Yes, they have Karis LeVert. It's kind of a team with just a 6th man. I mean, Danny Green helps some, but you
Danny
can't
Green,
expect
welcome home.
I know. It's great for him. Great story going back to to where it all started for him. But you just look at their performance against the Sixers. Like, Karis LeVert, shocking plus 14, but he only shot 3 times, 5 points, and he led the bench. I mean, you're looking at 12 bench points. They scored 112 points. Like, this is not a team that relies on this bench. This is a very starter reliant team, and they have great starters. But you're just going to need some kind of depth in the playoff. I mean, Sixers fans have seen that firsthand. Like, you need depth to actually survive. You need stars, first and foremost, don't get me wrong. But you also need depth to make a deep run. So I think maybe next year is a better year for Cleveland, but probably not, the real deal this year. as far as whether or not they're a real threat. But anyway, they go on a 4-game winning streak, the Sixers do, heading into the All-Star break, and things are looking pretty okay.
Yes, they are. And we're going to transition and get off this Cleveland game, and we're going to talk a little bit about some things going into the All-Star break. All right, so we're done talking about the Cavs game. Zach and I are right now going to take a look at the state of the Sixers up to this point of the season. And in case you didn't hear earlier, I think Zach mentioned their status in the East. The Sixers are 38-19, third in the East, one of the top defensive teams, surprisingly one of the better three-point shooting teams. Go figure, who would have thought that. But let's focus on the first part of this topic, Zach, and talk about some of the transactions or fits with players that are just started to play for the Sixers, or maybe some new roles that some players are adjusting to. So, Zach, let's talk about Jalen McDaniels. You mentioned him earlier. What do you think about his fit for this team short term as well as long term? And if you want to mention his contract and all that stuff, go right ahead. He's played 3 games with the Sixers. What are your thoughts on Jalen right now?
Well, I'd like to open by saying, yes, he has played 3 games with the Sixers, and they are 3-0 in that time. So do with that information what you will. But I'm absolutely a big Jalen McDaniels
3 games?
fan. You know,
Wow.
Listen, undefeated in the Jalen McDaniels era. It's
a whole 3
stuff.
games.
You know, it's
watch out.
Undefeated.
Watch out. We're winning the championship now.
Listen, you never know, and I've been a fan of McDaniels. You know, I mean, him and Jaden for some time. Jaden plays with the Timberwolves, of course. He's actually the more well known of the two. But no, I've been a fan with him in Charlotte. He was a guy who I would have loved him coming to Philadelphia. To be honest with you, I didn't mock a lot of trades having him coming to Philly just because I didn't think it was realistic. You know, he is a pending free agent, so it does on the one hand make sense that Charlotte wanted to move on from him, but that being said, they have his bird rights. Well, I should say they had, because now Philadelphia has them. And that's going to make it easier to retain him in the offseason. So as far as the short-term fit, because that's what matters most right now with Philadelphia, I think he's a guy who he fits a lot of needs for the Sixers. You know, he does a bit of what Matisse Thybulle did, which is, you know, that defensive intensity, add a little bit of length defensively. He's not the defender that Matisse Thybulle is. Let's just get that out of the way right now. He's not going to be the off-ball defense wonder that Matisse Thybulle was. I think he might actually be a little bit more helpful on ball against the types of players the Sixers will be facing. Matisse was very good at times defending, say, Steph Curry, although he's also had his problems with guards. But against the Giannis Antetokounmpos, and yes, that's going to be probably Joel and PJ Tucker who handle that mostly, but he's going to be a great third option, possibly fourth behind Tobias Harris for Giannis, for Tatum. He can help slow down Jaylen Brown. There's just so many different ways that he can impact the game. And he's the kind of guy who he could kind of bottle up a Jrue Holiday if it were to, which could help as well. If you don't want to have him on Giannis, but you want to kind of just take away that second hand, for the Milwaukee Bucks. You know, he's the kind of guy who can take that secondary star, and especially if it's a guard, and really just kind of limit them, especially from the perimeter. He's quick, he's nimble, he's long, he's athletic. Like he is the type of player the Sixers have needed for so long and have just not had. So to have him, I love it. I think that you're going to be looking at a playoff role with him. You never know with Doc Rivers and younger players, but he's given him a pretty long leash so far. I have a good feeling about him this year. Long term, I very much want Philadelphia to bring him back. Whether or not they will, that's a different story, but they're going to have his bird years so they can sign him even beyond the cap space that they have. If he's somewhere around that $8 to $10 million a year, like that's somewhere that I'm thinking of going, so if you can get him for like, I don't know, 3 for, honestly, I do 3 for 30, something such as that for Jalen. Even if you want to do like a 2 and a player option, something such as that, like just bring him back, because this is a guy who's young, developing. He can take over for Tobias Harris, if he leaves either this upcoming offseason or the year after when his contract runs up. Like there's ways he can do that. He can grow into taking over for PJ Tucker as well. He's a great fit in Philadelphia. I hope they keep him around for the long haul, but I'm at least happy to have him now. I mean, am I just overreacting, Uriah? Have you seen anything of what I'm talking about with Jalen McDaniels?
Well, looking at his 3 games with the Sixers, game against Brooklyn, 16 minutes, 2 of 4 from the field. He was a -1. That was his debut game. Debut game for Thibault in Portland. I don't know. He was like 4 for 6 from 3, 4 blocks. I don't know. But that's Thibault. He's way out where he went to college, out in the West Coast. We wish him the best. I
love that landing spot for Thibault. Like, if there's a place
it is a good spot
in the continental United States that I think that he would just love life the most, it's Portland, Oregon. So and playing along Dame, like I think it's a great situation for him. So I'm very happy for Thibault.
And maybe the fit, like timing is everything. The fact that he was drafted to the Sixers and is playing in a slow half-court system where everything revolves around Embiid, that might not have been the best fit for him. Where they get out and run with Dame, it definitely fits, as we've seen. But back to McDaniels.
Sure.
So the most points he's scored for us is 8 points against Houston. Last night he had 4 points. Not numbers that are going to knock your socks off, but you were mentioning some of his attributes, his length, being nimble, his agility. He can do more than Thibault offensively. I forget what game. It might have been the Brooklyn game where he drove the lane. We started out 3-point line. Pump faked, drove, and then at that moment, either you're going to take the shot or you're going to kick it back out. Well, instead, he found a cutter, which was Maxey, gave it to him in the right spot. Maxey, left-hand layup, boom. So in that situation, comparatively to Thibault's he's either doing a jump hook or he's kick it right back out because he just doesn't have that skill set. So all the things you said, I agree 100%. The money and stuff, like, you're the expert at that. I'll take your word for it. But I do like him being on the Sixers right now, and I think that he's a great asset for what they're trying to do. Yeah. Let's talk about now, Zach, our recent signing, Dwayne Dedmon.
Yeah.
The Sixers picked him up, and we were talking before the podcast how effective he was as a 3-point shooter, stretching the floor. He shot over 217 3-pointers in 2018, shot 38%. So that tells you he's able to stretch the floor. But the question is his age, his lack of athleticism, Doc's, penchant for relying on backup centers that are long in the tooth. But we didn't talk about this yet. What are your thoughts on the Dedmon signing?
So the Dedmon signing is one people didn't like it. Like, that's just the straight up truth of it. Like, you go Sixers Twitter in absolute shambles. You had people who were hugging their family because they were so upset by the news, and I think that's a bit of an overreaction, if I'm being honest. A lot of people wanted Nerlens Noel. It does not look like he's being bought out. That's something that James Edwards of The Athletic reported well over a month ago. Of course, since then, news came out that he might, be bought out. Via Keith Pompey broke that news, and while I am not for 1 second doubting Keith's source because I very much believe that he was told that by a reliable source, I just don't believe that source was inside the Pistons organization, or at least not Nerlens' camp, I should say. So with that being the case, Nerlens Noel is not being bought out. Now Kevin Love looks like he may be bought out, and I see some Sixers fans clamoring for Love, and I like the fit with Love. I don't know what they'll do. They already signed Dedmon. That seems like an odd thing for them to do, is to get Dedmon and Love. But the fact that we're focusing kind of on the other players that people were hoping for kind of does give you that first impression of Dwayne Dedmon. He's not the player that he was, 4 or 5 years ago. I don't think he has to be. I think that I think the ideal backup center situation with the Sixers is to have Paul Reed be the primary backup, and then Dwayne Dedmon's your third option from there. So when you're up against size, or if Paul does get into foul trouble, which we know Doc is worried about, then you have Dwayne Dedmon there as that third option, that safety valve. He's a half decent rebounder, at least defensively. And it's an area that, really a few different areas that he's just more useful than Montrezl Harrell. And it's a similar situation. Both guys are past their prime. Like, that's straight up it. But you just at least have the threat of Dwayne Dedmon taking a shot from outside the paint, whereas you don't even have that threat with Montrezl Harrell. So being able to have that threat offensively, being able to get those defensive rebounds, and even just having more size, which just clogs the paint a little bit better. And like, literally just by being, I mean, what is he, a good 4 or 5 inches taller than Harrell? Like, that by itself almost makes him a better paint defender. So, you put on top of that fact that, he at one time was actually a half decent shot blocker. Like, he's fine. Like, it's not the end of the world that they got him instead of X, Y, or Z candidate that people wanted. They would have gotten the guy that you wanted if the guy you wanted was available. Like, that's basically it. Like, they didn't have the contracts for a Mason Plumlee. Nerlens Noel's not getting bought out. Like, I get that those are the kind of players that people wanted, or they wanted a Naz Reid, which who knows how much Naz Reid would cost at the deadline. There's a reason Naz Reid was not moved at the deadline. So looking at all this, is he going to solve all the solutions for the Sixers? Like, absolutely not. But I think that as long as they have him be that third option or that option against bigger lineups, everything's going to be fine. I mean, he's probably going to see like 10 minutes a game and play every, like, I don't know, third game, something like that. Like, he's not playing every night. Like, that's the thing too, is like he just, it's going to be based on matchups. And while Doc has kind of said that, and we can debate on how true that has been when Doc has mentioned different lineups for different looks. It really does look to be the case this time, especially with how well Paul Reed's been playing. So I'm not overly worried about it. Right. It's not. I mean, it's not like you're getting an all-star from the buyout, but it's not a problem. I think it's still a positive addition. I mean, how do you feel about that whole thing, Uriah?
So although he is taller for his career, he's like only averaged 0.8 blocks for his career. Don't forget, he was with the Sixers for a cup of coffee. So a lot of people forget he was part of that process Sixers team. He's a slightly better rebounder than Trez, numbers wise. And I think the overall arching, I'd say, theme for his signing is he's an insurance policy. Like, if anything happens to Embiid, we know that Trez is there, but also Reed is there. So I don't see him getting a lot of minutes, like you said. And just hopefully in the playoffs, we won't need to see him or Harrell. That's my biggest hope. So let's go to something. There are people still talking about this topic, and you might have mentioned it while I wasn't on the podcast. And now we have a larger sample size of games that Maxey has played in his new role as sixth man. Some people are for it. Some people are against it. Now that we've seen him adjust a little bit, have a nice conversation with his parents to get him to settle down, to get his mind right. He's had some really nice games off the bench, but he's also had a couple of not so good games off the bench. So at this point, have you changed your position on Maxey coming off the bench? Where do you stand right now with that?
Yeah, no, I haven't changed my position on it. I still think playing Maxey off the bench is like, listen, it's tough to argue when you're winning, right? The Sixers have been one of the best teams in the NBA. I think they're tied with the Bucks for the best record in the NBA since the start of the new year. Tough to argue with winning. That being said, Tyrese Maxey is clearly a much less effective player in this role. And you can absolutely have a similar effect to what you're looking for, which is staggering him with Harden. You can absolutely do that while having him in the starting lineup. It is as simple as subbing a guy out after about 5 or so minutes and then replacing them later. Like, if you just actually substitute players and manage that, which Doc doesn't do, he plays the starters and he plays the bench. But if you actually manage your guys, you can accomplish the same thing without taking away somebody's starter title. So I will stand by that until my last day. That being said, the Sixers are winning, and at the end of the day, it's tough to argue with that.
First of all, I want to say you put a little extra zing on that. Doc doesn't do. I like the emphasis. I like how you emphasize that. I'm so used to that.
I got to call it like it is. That's what he doesn't do. That's his thing. That's his. Yeah. Like people have niches. Greg Popovich, has always been kind of a curmudgeon, and Doc Rivers plays his all bench lineup. It's what people do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. With all due respect, allow me to tell you why you're wrong. You ready for this?
Be my guest.
I respect your opinion.
Sure.
So you have to think about a few things. There's two things in particular: touches, as well as the matchups with Maxey coming off the bench versus him in the starting lineup. Let's start with touches. You figure Embiid has to get his touches.
Yeah.
You have to figure for Harden to truly be effective as a playmaker, he has to be effective as a scorer, whether he's doing step back threes, which will then allow him to drive the lane, kick out to PJ, kick out to Tobias, kick out to Melton. He needs his shots. To have Maxey out there kind of getting that third option, fourth option in the offense, it's not a waste of his time, but for him coming off the bench, when someone goes to the bench who is taking shots in the starting lineup, Maxey now gets more touches. He's more effective driving to the lane. I think that him coming off the bench allows him to get more touches depending on who he subs in for. The other thing I want to say is matchups. You got to figure every starting lineup in the NBA typically has their best offensive players and their best defensive players. So if Maxey's coming off the bench, let's say coming off the bench around the 8-minute mark, 7-minute mark, whatever. Well, the other team's like 2-3 players that are probably good defenders are now going to the bench, and Maxey's coming in. So, and then he's playing against subs at that point, second stringers. So that's my take. I respect your opinion, but I like Maxey in the six-man role. And the one thing that we'll give Doc credit for is he knows how to develop players that can really heat up off the bench. He did it with Jamal Crawford, obviously Lou Williams. And who else did he have out there? And Montrezl Harrell. Just with the Sixers, a couple years too late. Yeah. So that's all right. You have a differing opinion about Maxey. We'll see how it goes. Like you said, they're winning. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Now, one thing I do want to bring up real quick before we get off this topic. Okay. I do want to also.
You're gonna tell me I'm wrong, right?
I'm just gonna point out one thing real quick. I'm just gonna point out one thing real quick.
Okay.
Tyrese Maxey
tell me I'm wrong.
Is also one of the Sixers' best shooters off the catch and shoot. So, with that being the case, having him out there with James Harden is majorly beneficial to the offense. So you can have it so that you stagger him in a way where that when he's out there with the other, with Joel and with Harden, you can work him, in the corners off the pick and pop, but you can work him in catch and shoot scenarios, and then you can give him free reign when he's running with. And I'm a guy who I love James Harden and George Niang. So, I'm thinking more so like if you want to put Maxey with the Jaden McDaniels, with a Shake Milton, Paul Reed. He's played. I think Harden's starting to play better with Paul Reed, but Maxey's played pretty well with Paul Reed as well. I'd gotta say. I just think there's a way that you can do it, but they're giving Maxey minutes with the starters anyway. So again, I just don't know what the argument is, because if you're staggering the guys like you could if he was still a starter, and you're playing them together like you could if he was still a starter, I just don't get the need for putting him off the bench, like if that makes any sense. But again, differing opinions. It is what it is.
Yeah,
like I said, I'm ready to fight this till I die. So we're gonna keep it up. But
as
like
long
you said,
as he, I think we can agree. As long as he's ending games in the starting lineup, I think we can both agree on that.
So I'm going to go back to Cleveland really quick, just super quick. I'm going to go back to Cleveland. It was very interesting because you had Maxey ending the game, and then in defensive substitutions, which is normal, they were subbing Maxey out. Normally, they would sub PJ Tucker in. They subbed Jalen McDaniels in instead. That was matchup dependent because and PJ Tucker played great against Cleveland, but just looking at the scouting report, it's a better matchup for McDaniels. So doing that kind of formula where you're either subbing Maxey out and they would do the same thing for Thibault. They would sub him in when they needed a defensive stop. Like, that's a very common thing. So yes, I definitely do agree. As long as he's offensively closing games and then just subbed out for a defender in key spots, that is what matters most at the end of the day. But just as long as he's staying effective, like when he's during these 16 games that he's been playing, he's actually shot okay. 39% from three, 46% from the field, 81.5, on the season from the free throw line. And so it's like they're fine numbers. The 3-point's a little bit better than it was. The field goal percentage is also a little bit up, but he also dealt with that foot injury, so you have to wonder about that. But he's doing fine. The team's winning. Just keep on winning, and then if you're not, then we have a problem. It's kind of one of those things where you just kind of have to keep going, and then you have to adapt if it starts to not work.
Yeah, I can't argue with anything you just said, and I think we can move on. And at this point, Zach, let's talk about expectations and how this team has performed up to this point. If we go back to last season, I have it right here in front of me. At the same time where they were going into the All-Star break, the Sixers were 35-23. 35-23. So that's where they were this time last year. And this season, they are, where's their record? They are, where did it
38
go?
and 19.
I just had it. Right. So, yeah. I mean, that's just wins and losses, but overall performance, what would you say about the expectations you had in September versus where we are now?
Yeah, I mean, so the surface level answer, I'd say they're about on course. A top 3 team in the East, more wins than last year, or especially on track for more wins than last year at least. There have certainly been some interesting developments. Like, this guys have missed a lot of games between Embiid, Harden, and Maxey. There's been some missed games. That's not been ideal. Harden started off a little slow. He's progressively gotten better each month, which has been great to see. So I think on the surface level, you say like, oh, it's like fine, it's okay. And then I actually have, well, again, the big disappointment being PJ Tucker not playing up to the level that many expected him to play, which I think is a fair criticism. But, looking at, the individual details of everything, the moves made at the deadline, just how Embiid's played, how the Embiid-Harden connection's growing, Maxey adapting to a role off the bench, all of that considered, I think it's actually slightly above expectation. I think this is a team that really still looks like, they're the 3rd seed, but I think this is a contender out of the East. Part of that is I don't think the Bucks are as good as they've been in the past, and the Celtics, listen, they're coming off a finals appearance. They have an MVP candidate in Jason Tatum. They have Jaylen Brown. They have, Robert Williams. They have Al Horford, Malcolm Brogdon, who is a steal of an offseason addition. Derek
Mike
White.
Mike
Muscala, Sixers legend Mike Muscala. This is
without
a
him,
team.
we don't have Maxey.
Absolutely. And the Sixers haven't played well against the Celtics this season. It's just that last game, especially playing against them, and it's their second fiddle players, and still losing that game. I mean, that's pretty rough. The Sixers are, I believe they're 0-2 with 2 more to go against the Celtics. One actually upcoming next Saturday, I want to say. But these last 2 games are going to be your chance to kind of show Boston that, like, no, we can beat you, and we will beat you. And if they do that, I feel a little bit better. But I think this is a team that can at least make, depending on matchups again, the 3rd round. Which is, like, I hate to say that that's the goal, because the goal should be winning the championship, but I think right now people in Philadelphia would just take getting past the 2nd round, So I feel overall pretty good about the team.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree for a lot of the reasons you said. I really enjoy seeing players continue to grow, whether it's Maxey or especially Shake Milton. I've been a Shake Milton supporter since his rookie season, and that stretch when guys were hurt, particularly Harden, it was a stretch of games where he's averaging over 20 points a game. You could see he was just, he just opened up. He was glowing.
Much more confident.
He was doing things that they needed him to do, and I felt really good for him. I hope he gets more minutes moving forward. And, Embiid is doing what Embiid does. Harden, like you said, he's adjusting his role and doing it at a great level. He's leading the league in assists, 10-point assists, 10.8 assists a game. So I'm on board with you. I like what I see. My question to you now is, what concerns you most at this point?
It's a good question.
Besides Doc Rivers,
I think a lot of people are still going to see the backup center position. For me personally, it's just putting it together in the postseason, and that's kind of a cop-out answer. But you need to run the same game that's working, and that's been working in the regular season, which starts with the pick and roll. Like, yeah, there's going to be a lot more switching in the postseason, and yeah, it's going to get a lot tighter. It's going to be a lot more difficult, but that has proven that it should be your bread and butter if you're Philadelphia. So that Harden and Embiid pick and roll right at the elbow, it's beautiful. It works just about every time. Keep on running that. Absolutely. It also looks like having to stay healthy. Like that's the thing that we're going to have to see is come in with a healthy Embiid and a healthy Harden, because that's something that we really haven't seen into the playoffs, and it also looks like having a consistent rotation, something where guys know what their role is, so if the Sixers come in and they're able to do those things, so it looks often like the little things, though obviously injuries are a big thing, but just take care of business like you are in the regular season, show that you can put it all together in the postseason. First team, first round, we don't know who they're going to match up against, obviously. Punch them in the mouth. That's it. Like, assert your dominance early. Like, that's what I need to see from Philadelphia, Like, prove yourself as a contender. And from there, just take it one game at a time.
Yeah, the thing that stood out to me is health. We know that with a healthy Embiid and healthy Harden, healthy Maxey, etc., this team has shown us being the best team since December, record-wise, even better than Milwaukee, that when these guys are playing together, they get consistent time, the chemistry builds. This team is a top team. I don't care what Stephen A. Smith says or JJ Redick, like all these haters who are just drooling over Denver and drooling over the Celtics. And, those are great teams, but we are in that mix. And I think what concerns me outside of health is Doc Rivers connected to what you said about rotation. What we've been seeing lately, like the past 3 games, Maxey, J-Mac, Reed, Niang, and Shake, I love that. I think, to me, and I know it's early, that's the best second unit I think we've ever had in terms of youth, bounce, energy, lob threats. I mean, just seeing Reed and McDaniels complement each other in that backcourt situation, offensive rebounds, switching. Like, the switching has been,
it's amazing what happens when you just play athletes with size on the court at the same time, isn't it? Isn't that amazing?
Hello. So as long as Doc recognizes that and stays with it, I'm cool with it. But again, Doc is going to be Doc, and hopefully it won't be at the wrong time. So yeah, I think that's what concerns me. And I think we can move on to some post All-Star break predictions.
For sure. Let's have a little bit of fun. Yeah. So, I mean, the first thing kind of like right along with that is we got to figure out where these teams are going to end up at the end of the season. So, I've already mentioned, I think this is going to be a top 3 team. But if you had to predict, is this team 3-2-1, or do you think they fall out of the top 3? Like, where do you think that this team kind of lands once that last game is played?
Oh, man. Well, all right. I'm going to be as honest as I can be. Be straight up and down with you like 6 o'clock. I believe, and they did this, I think, 2 years ago, I believe that the Sixers can win the East. That was actually my prediction. I think they can. I think with health and the new addition of McDaniels and everybody coming along at the right time, we can win the East. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be easy, because it won't, because Milwaukee is still a force to be reckoned with. Boston has a system of players that can plug in and fit in and good coaching and all that. But I believe that they can win the East. Now, will they? I think realistically, the way that Boston's been playing and Giannis and his group, I think the Sixers might end up second. Boston, I think it's going to be hard to grapple that top spot. They're only 3 games out of first place, Zach. They're 3 games out of first. And we know that the Sixers can go on a run. They had a nice 7-8 game win streak. They won, I don't know how many in a row on the road, which is another good thing for a championship contending team, a team that can win on the road. I think Brooklyn's going to fall. New York might rise a little bit. Miami, I'm still sketchy about. I'm not bullish on Miami. The Hawks are a joke. Raptors might make a run for the play-in. But it's really about Boston, Milwaukee, and the Sixers. And Cleveland, like we said earlier, they're like maybe around the 4 or 5. So that's what I think about the standings. What do you think?
Yeah, so I kind of come out to a similar spot. I also think the Sixers ultimately end up in that second seed. Do I think they can take the top seed? I do think that they can. I think that a lot can happen in these final 20-something games. That being said, I actually think Milwaukee takes the top seed in the East. And I think the Sixers land at number 2. And I think Boston ends in the 3 seed.
Really?
I think that they end in the 3 seed.
Why is that? Please help me out with that. How are they going to fall out?
So let's look first at the records right now. So Boston is 42-17, right? The Bucks, they're just a game back. They're at 40-17. Milwaukee's about to win against the Bulls. They're up 10 points right now. So they're going to close that to a half game. Now, the Celtics do have admittedly kind of a light schedule down the stretch. Multiple games against the Raptors. The games against the Jazz, you want to say, are going to be easy, but you never know with the Jazz. But again, also they're playing the Rockets, the Timberwolves, the Pacers, the Spurs, all that good stuff, right? So it looks moderately easy. But that being said, they are dealing with some nagging injuries. Jaylen Brown is currently hurt. He is going to be better by the postseason, but I just find it. I think that they're going to continue to succeed. It's just that the Sixers and the Bucks will succeed more, if that makes sense. So this is not about the Celtics falling apart. This is not about, some injury befalling them, anything like that. But the Bucks are on an 11-game win streak, soon to be 12-game win streak already. Philadelphia has just begun a 4-game win streak that I think it continues against Memphis, and I think that they finally beat the Celtics on top of that. So that gets you to 6. Then you have a home-and-home with Miami. I think Philadelphia favors very well against Miami. Then you have the Dallas Mavericks on March 2nd. That's going to be an interesting one. Luka, Kyrie, everything such as that. But once you get past the Milwaukee Bucks, which are the following game, then you're looking at kind of a similar schedule. Pacers, Timberwolves, Trailblazers, which I think is a win, Wizards, Cavaliers, Hornets, Pacers, Bulls, Warriors, Phoenix Suns, that'll be interesting. Denver Nuggets, that'll be interesting. Mavericks, Raptors, and then you kind of finish hard again against the Bucks, Celtics, Heat, Hawks, and Nets. But as difficult as some of those teams are to beat, I think the Sixers favor or match up favorably against a good portion of them. So with that being said, I just think it's a situation where, maybe Boston finishes on a pretty solid streak, but I just think Milwaukee and the Sixers just get a little bit hotter than Boston, and that's how it ends up that way. But it's going to be an interesting race, once we get down to the finals. But give me a top 3 seed, and I'm basically good. I would prefer not to face Boston in the second round, just my preference. But that may very well be how it ends up, so we'll see.
All right, I think you introduced the 6-man. I think, is that the next topic? I think you're on mute, but you gotta get the mute button.
My fault. I thought I unmuted myself.
It's all right.
So that's where I think that they end for the regular season. But it's not just where the team ends. That's the most important thing, and then of course the postseason. Actually, that's the most important thing. But there's a couple things going on with Philadelphia where it's just like with the fun stuff, right? Like, are they going to be able to partake in those this year? And what does that look like? The awards like sixth man, James Harden in the assist title. Does Joel Embiid, have a shot at the MVP? So let's take these one by one. Okay. Let's start with Tyrese Maxey. He's in the bench role. You love him in the bench role.
Yes.
Do we think that he has a shot at the sixth man title this year?
Well, it's funny because obviously when he was a starter, he wasn't even in this category. But according to MGM, I checked the odds. He's actually second most likely in Vegas's opinion to win that award. So Malcolm Brogdon, who obviously is in Boston doing great things, he's minus 150. He's the favorite, but not that far behind him. Maxey is a plus 250. Then Norman Powell's 450, plus 450, which that ain't happening. Russell Westbrook, who doesn't even have a job right now, plus 3,000. Benedict Mathurin, who's a player. I love this kid. He's plus 4,000, but he needs another couple seasons to like garner like
for
some
sure.
Consistent respect.
Already got that superstar whistle. Much credit to him.
Yeah. I can't deny that. Jordan Poole plus 8,000. Bobby Portis plus 8,000. Christian Wood, who probably deserves more minutes that he's getting. He's plus 10,000. Bogdanovich plus 15,000. So to answer your question, can Maxey get the sixth man of the year? I think so. And the reason why is because Brogdon, he's more of a point guard. He'll get you like maybe 16 and 7 or 8, depending on what the rotation is with Marcus Smart when he comes back, etc. So Maxey, if he's getting 30 plus minutes and he has free reign in that second unit, he's going to be putting up more 25, 28, even 30-point games, which could bump him closer to winning that award. So I think he can do it. To me, it all depends on if, what happens when Marcus Smart comes back.
Yeah, I think Marcus Smart's return definitely has a factor to play in there as far as how Brogdon reacts in that situation and what the lineups look like, what his opportunity looks like. Statistically, you look at it, Tyrese Maxey is the obvious choice. That is not as obvious as that, though, obviously, because Maxey has 22 games started already. So I think where you really start to see this conversation take a turn is just as the season progresses. Even if they were to replicate the same stats going forward, but you're just giving Maxey more games off the bench, I think you're furthering his argument to be named the sixth man of the year. So currently he's at, I believe, 16 games played off the bench versus 22 as a starter. There's 25 left, I want to say, for the Sixers. So at most he can play 63 games, right? So if you take those 63 games and let's just say that he's on the bench for the rest of the season, right? That's 41. That's half the season played as a bench player. More than half, that's basically 2/3 of his season, because again, he'd be hurt for that. He was hurt for that other rest of the time as a bench player. I definitely think that you see that there. Basically, as the closer you get to that halfway point for Maxey season, so within the next 6 games or so, the more I think you're going to see that argument start to take a turn. So I would say probably 6 to 10 games from now, he may even be the favorite for this award. So I do think that I do agree with you that he is the a player who can absolutely win that there. But I think games played is the real argument that is for now holding him back, but only for now, and that eventually that will change. But so that's it for Maxey. But there's another Sixer who's up for a potential award. That's the assist leader in the NBA right now, Mr. James Harden. So Harden, absolutely, we talked about him earlier. He's been getting better month by month. Do we think that he can hold on to his assist leads?
Well, let's look at the top 5, Zach. So Harden is averaging 10.8 assists a game. Trae Young is right behind him, 10.3. Jokic, I pray to God Jokic does not win this because that'll lead to something else that we'll get into. He's at 10.1 assists per game. Tyrese Halliburton, who some people argue the Sixers should have gotten instead of Harden, but that's neither here nor there. He's at 10.1. And Ja Morant, 8.3. If Harden continues the path that he's taken and understands that his effectiveness as a distributor with the pick and roll, especially with Joel Embiid kicking out for 3-pointers to all of the sharpshooters that we have. He can maintain this level of playmaking. I think he will win the assist title if he doesn't miss any more games going out. I don't care what Trae Young is doing or Jokic is doing. I think Harden he has more weapons, in my opinion. Some people in Denver will be like, no, he actually has more weapons in Denver. No, I think Harden has some really great pieces off the bench and in the starting lineup for the Sixers. So my answer is yes, he will win the assist title. What do you think?
I'm also going to say yes. The thing I will say about Denver is I actually think Jokic does have more weapons, but that's not why I don't think Jokic is going to win the assist title because of that. I think that Harden makes the most of what he has, and because he's not the primary offensive asset to his team, he's able to have that extra creativity and flexibility. Like, if Nikola Jokic played like with Kevin Durant and he didn't have to worry about being the sole offensive focus, I think Jokic could probably easily average 12 assists per game. Like,
that's a good point.
There is like, and I hate to say this, like, because I'm a big Wilt guy, and I don't love comparing new players to old players inherently because it's just completely different eras and all that. But there is a bit of that Wilt aspect to Jokic where it seems like if he decides he wants to do something, he can go out and do it to a degree. Defensively, that's a whole nother conversation, and we'll have that. But as far as points, rebounding, assists, as far as those traditional triple-double stats, it certainly seems that way. Now, he can't rebound nearly the level Wilt did. No one will ever do that again. No one will ever score the way Wilt Chamberlain did ever again. But that being said, there is that kind of ability that he has to do it. But with that being said, that's just not the Nuggets offense. James Harden is I'm trying to think about a good parallel to draw. You want to say he's the engine of the offense, but he's not. He doesn't handle the scoring load. He is the facilitator, like pure and simple. So he and Joel Embiid have the most assists and buckets scored off assists between each other as a couple. Anyone, or tandem, a duel, anyone in the NBA, like by far, like this is one of the best partnerships in the entire NBA, James Harden and Joel Embiid. So I think having a player like Embiid, who is the best, weapon, better than anyone that Nikola Jokic has, and I think having those spacing shooters like Georges Niang, Tyrese Maxey, that gives Harden an edge. And the fact that I think Harden will be, for the most part, healthy from here to the end of the season, I think he clears his title. And I think he will end averaging more than 11 assists per game, and he'll be the only player doing that at the end of the season.
Amen.
So then there's, of course, after the assist title,
bring it,
the big award.
Yes.
A lot of people may have heard the latest straw poll for the MVP voting came out today. Surprise, surprise. Far and away in the lead was one Nikola Jokic. So, Uriah, I think you have an opinion on Nikola Jokic. I think that there were some people, some from Denver, some maybe from a little further out of town, who voiced quite an opinion against your opinion there. Do you want to speak on that at all, or do you want to speak on Jokic at all?
I've been waiting for this all week, and I have to preface this by saying, for any, and this will become a short, and I'll make sure it gets tagged for Jokic fans. I want to preface this by saying, number one, I respect you guys for being passionate and cheering for Jokic, whether you're from his homeland in Serbia, or whether you're a Nuggets fan. That's your guy. And that's what's great about sports and the debating and these podcasts and all the stuff that we do. Is like we can be as passionate about our favorite players as we want, not take it personal, and just agree to disagree. That being said, here's what I'll say about Jokic and Embiid and why Embiid deserves the MVP over Jokic. So we all know Jokic is the best passer, big man in the NBA. I'm not even going to argue that. I'm not arguing that. And statistics are right there. You can Google it. He's, high up there with tip passes, deflections, and top 10 in steals, whatever. When you talk about what he does as a player, To me, he's just a very outstanding one-way offensive player. In basketball, yes, 3-pointers are important, more important than it's ever been. But there are times in the game where a team will just need a 1-point, 2-pointer, layup, whatever. Jokic does not protect the rim anywhere near as good as Embiid. And I believe that what Jokic does, even at a high level, being a distributor, a passer, no-look passes, that's all great, all well and good. But I played basketball, I've coached basketball, and we all know that the true two-way players, whether it's Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant, Embiid's in that conversation now. Look at his numbers. What he has to do for the Sixers is so much more challenging in terms of energy that is exerted to protect the paint whenever you need someone to be that anchor in the middle. That's Joel Embiid. Jokic, I'm sorry. And I know he has highlights where he blocked Giannis once and had some nice game-saving blocks, but you play enough games, you're going to have some highlights, right? Embiid does it every night. He puts his body on the line and is on the floor multiple times in the game. Why? Because he is counted on to come from weak side and make a ridiculous block. He can run from end to end and make a chase down block on anybody. James Harden, LeBron James, anybody in the NBA. Jokic ain't doing that. He's just not. So my argument to all these expert analysts, most of them work for the Ringer or from the Boston area, and they just love a big man that can do all these fancy passes. That's great. But my status, and I want to die on this hill, is that Embiid is an outstanding player on both sides of the ball, not just one. There, I'm done. I said it. Bring it on, Serbia. Denver. Bring it on. I'm ready.
All right. Yeah, nice. I feel like oftentimes, because I think it's been a consistent talking point from the pro Jokic community, and again, let me open this by saying I think Nikola Jokic is one of the generational talents in the NBA.
Agreed.
And I don't think that there is any denying that. But there's been a lot of talk about Nikola's growth defensively, and a lot of people throwing out the term, above average defender. I think he's seen defensive growth since he came into the league. Obviously, I think a lot of that has been refining his strength and then just learning how to utilize that strength, because he's a very smart player. He's smart, but there's a difference between IQ and talent. And I think that's where you kind of start to lose the conversation a little bit. But people are referencing defensive box plus minus, defensive win shares, and it's like there are flaws in these certain statistics, and that's why, I'm not a pure analytic guy, and I'm not a pure eye test guy. I think that ideally you have to look at all the information presented, and that includes the eye test. So that's definitely something that plays a factor. But listen, throwing out defensive win shares and defensive box plus minus, that's not going to tell you that. I mean, the man's averaging 4.6. That's his defensive box plus minus is a positive 4.6. That is a strong defender. That is not Nikola Jokic. If you watch these games, that's just a simple matter of fact. I think he is about average. I think he is about average, maybe a tick below, and that's not bad. And he's one of the greatest offensive players of my, since I was born. Since I've been born, Nikola Jokic is one of the greatest offensive players to grace the NBA. But that being said, let's just keep the argument what it actually is. Let's focus in reality. Nikola Jokic is up for this third MVP because he is a generational offensive talent. Let's not sit here saying he's an above average defender now. Well, he's really not. You can give certain advanced defensive metrics and you can kind of pigeonhole arguments, whatever way you want. He's definitely grown defensively, and I think this year is his most deserving MVP season of what will be, the 3 total that he's won.
Averaging a triple-double, yeah.
Yeah, it's super impressive. I also remember Russell Westbrook being hated on pretty heavily for winning an MVP when he averaged a triple-double. But that's just, that aside. Yeah. It is a stunning season by Nikola Jokic. Just, he's not an above-average defender. Let's just There's plenty of arguments to make pro Jokic. That's not one of them. Just leave that one at the door if you ask me.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say, I did forget to say this, is in terms of altering shots, that game against Brooklyn, we know why Mikal Bridges missed that bunny. We know. If you play ball, you know, you got to get that ball up before that shot blocking threat gets there. And Embiid is almost better than anyone outside of Giannis, like really getting that block in that situation. So Jokic is not altering any shots. Like Bridges is laying it up or he's dunking it. Let's just call it what it is. And like in the eye test, I think it's like the easiest way, in my opinion, to really know the distinction in defense. But last situation, I'll just say this. If Milwaukee is down 1 and they're playing Denver, or if Milwaukee is down 1 with 10 seconds left, and they're playing the Sixers, who do you think would be chosen to take on Giannis for that last shot? Yeah. You think you're picking Jokic to try and stop Giannis or Embiid?
Well, that's the thing.
I think that settles the argument.
If Denver's playing Milwaukee, like Aaron Gordon's probably taking Giannis. Like that's.
Yeah, but if they switch.
Oh no!
Giannis
I hear
like
you, but my entire point is that Jokic isn't the prime defender. Like there's been times where Embiid's been the prime defender,
but they'll find
Giannis,
a way.
But like, oh sure they will. I'm sure they will.
Budenholzer will find a way to get him on Giannis.
And you're 100% right. If at the end of the day, whether it's through a switch or whether it's the direct matchup, if it's Jokic or Embiid on Giannis, you want Embiid. Like that's just clear, present, and obvious. You're 1,000% right. But we'll continue this MVP conversation as the season goes. Basically, where I'm at with it, I don't care about the MVP conversation anymore. I'm looking at that Finals MVP, baby. So hopefully Joel Embiid is as well. He certainly said as much. But for now, I've been Zach Chavalella. Yeah. He's been Uriah Young, and we just hit you with the baseline scoop.
I had the sound effect instead of the song.
That's cool, man.
It's all right. People just have to.
Just
have to deal with it.
Honestly, it was kind of bad. It was pretty cool hearing that sound effect as the closeout, to be honest with you.
I wasn't trying to drown you out, Zach.
No, you're good, man. You're good. No worries.
All right, we'll see you guys. We'll see you guys next time.
Peace.